Welcome to Interfaith Food Shuttle's Food Pulling and Safety Training video. In this video, we will talk about a variety of safety protocols, including pulling and storing food, transportation of the food, and specific guidelines for classes or mobile markets. So let's start with why food safety is important. When certain disease-causing bacteria or pathogens contaminate food, they can cause foodborne illness, often called food poisoning. Since foodborne illness can be serious or even fatal, it is important for you to know and practice safe food handling behaviors and to help reduce your risk of accidentally getting sick from contaminated food. There are 4 steps to ensuring food safety: cleaning hands, surfaces, or cans, separating produce from meats to avoid cross-contamination, cooking meats to recommended temperatures, and finally, properly chilling food for storage. Food for classes comes from our warehouse or the grocery store, so let's start at the beginning with food pulling guidelines for food safety. You'll want to refer to your intern handbook for complimentary information regarding food pulling, logging, expiration dates, and how to select or discard dented cans when pulling food from the warehouse. Before you prepare to pull food from the warehouse, you'll want to refer back to the clothing guidelines that are in your handbook, and also make sure that you have on closed-toed shoes before you enter the warehouse. When you arrive, you'll want to find the recipe or the food pulling list, or this list also may be on your Asana, and that'll be provided by the Cooking Matters coordinator. You'll next obtain a banana box for the upcoming class or market and label it with a pink or yellow sign. You'll want to wash your hands and then put on disposable gloves. Now let's look at what items to pull. You're going to pull categories of food separately and place them in the labeled banana box. You will wash and re-glove your hands between each category of food that you pull. Sometimes we have the opportunity to store items that we know we're going to need in the future in a clear bin in the deli cooler. So you'll always want to check this clear bin first before you pull from the rest of the coolers or from the warehouse. For canned goods, you're going to look for low sodium or sugar, no added salt, and sometimes even 100% juice can be found in cans. Dairy should be 2% milk or less. Beverages we often need are 100% juice, club soda, or seltzer water. For dry goods, you're going to want to look for whole grain items such as pasta or rice. And produce, you should pull no earlier than 3 days before it's going to be needed. For meat, you can pull 2 to 3 days in advance from the freezer and allow it to thaw in the cooler. Now that the food is pulled, we want to track what's coming out of the warehouse. This tracking process should always be done in the warehouse. But first you'll go into the hub and you'll get the nutrition scale. You'll set it to 0. You'll also pull the nutrition distribution log, which is located in the hub. Next, you're going to weigh each category and list the following information on the nutrition distribution log. We first want to know the date that you're pulling the food, that you have inspected it, so this would always be yes because you're going to look for moldy foods or foods that are really too far gone to be used well in classes. You're going to list the course, the event, the market, or the host site name, and then you're going to list the number of pounds for each of the categories and the total. You will only weigh unopened food. So some items that we use, we'll use for multiple classes, and we've already weighed them, such as soy sauce or cornstarch, or even individual bags of Cheerios or oatmeal that we use in classes. You do not need to weigh those items because they've already been opened. Now that we've pulled the food and we've tracked what's coming out of the warehouse, we want to store the food before class or market would begin. So after you've weighed everything, you're going to place the food back in the banana box, and you're going to take the box to the walk-in deli cooler. You're going to put that banana box on the labeled nutrition education shelf, and it'll be clearly marked with a yellow or pink sign indicating which class or event it's for. After classes are over, we distribute everything that has been pulled, but there are items that we use for multiple classes, and those were the items that you didn't weigh. But after class, you'll want to return those items to the clear bin in the deli cooler after your course or event is completed so that we can use them for the next one. Periodically, we pull food for our general inventory, and this allows us to have some items on hand that we know we typically need on a regular basis. These items would be stored either in the freezer or on the dry goods shelf. So items that we usually store in the freezer include dairy items such as cheese, cream cheese, or yogurt, meats including chicken or ground turkey, produce such as frozen fruit or vegetables, and then whole grains such as bread or prepackaged rice or prepackaged pasta. Sometimes we'll take a larger quantity and we'll break it into individual size bags, and those we would store in the freezer. Items that we would store on the dry goods shelf include whole grains such as cereal, brown rice, pasta, quinoa, or lentils, liquids such as vinegar, peanut butter, canola oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, etc. Baking items such as spices, baking powder, cocoa powder, flour, sugar. Canned produce such as black beans, pinto beans, corn, or tuna. And then dried fruit such as raisins or craisins that we use in recipes. Often we receive damaged cans in the warehouse, but most of the time the contents are safe to use. But when in doubt, throw it out. As a general guideline, stay away from cans that have dents with sharp edges, any cans that have swelled or are bulging, any cans that have dents on the seal either on the side or on the ends that could compromise the contents of the can. You'll want to refer to the handbook for more examples and pictures so that you know which cans to select for classes or markets when you're pulling food. So now we have what we need for class, so let's talk about how to safely transport that food to classes. There are a couple key things to note when transporting food to classes or markets. You'll want to separate raw meat and dairy into their own individual coolers. Eggs can be stored with raw meat. Make sure the food is kept cold enough or hot enough until it is served. Here are the 3 coolers that we have available for transportation to classes or markets. The red cooler is for meat or eggs, the blue cooler is for dairy, and the green cooler is for produce. You'll want to first pack all of your produce and dairy and meat into the coolers, then fill up the rest of the space with ice packs found in our freezer. You can then stack the coolers on top of each other for easy transportation. We use the blue cooler on the bottom, and then we'll put the produce cooler next and slide the handle through the black handle of the dairy cooler. And then finally you can place the red cooler on top, making transportation to classes very easy. Here are some things to keep in mind if you're going to be at a Cooking Matters class. We want to keep the take-home groceries in the coolers until they're ready to be distributed and taken home. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're using soap and water to clean and thoroughly dry all of the equipment that we use at each class. After graduation, we will take all the items back to the office. They'll be sanitized and run through our commercial dishwasher. And then for the coolers that were brought to class that included our dairy, meats, and produce, we will clean those, sanitize them, and allow them to air dry on racks in the warehouse after each class. When preparing foods for a mobile market, you'll be transporting ingredients from the warehouse to your home, but then you'll be transporting prepared foods from your home to the mobile market. So it's important to take extra care for sanitation. Follow the clean, cook, and chill protocol. Make cold foods the day before. Make hot foods on the day of. After it's prepared, it can go into a cooler for transportation or be transported in a crock pot. When serving foods at the market, we want to keep prepared foods hot and cold foods cold. We just don't want foods to be at room temperature. Beans have to be served hot or cold, also not at room temperature. After the market has concluded, we will discard any samples that are not used. Here is a graphic that shows the danger zone that we want to stay out of so that we don't increase the risk of pathogen growth. We want to have prepared foods be less than 40 degrees when transported to a mobile market, or have them above 140 degrees. Here's a chart that shows the internal temperature guide for any foods you may be preparing at home. These items are the typical foods that we would produce as part of a recipe for a mobile market or for a class. Thank you for taking the time to view this food pulling and safety video. If you have any questions specific to the recipe that you're preparing either at a class or at a market or a special event, please see your internship supervisor and they can answer all of your questions and give you some guidance on how best to make sure the foods that we prepare are safe for the people that we're serving.